In order to achieve the lighting setup of your dreams, you often need a level of lighting equipment which makes your wallet run in fear.
However, even if you have a limited budget, it's good to understand the fundamentals of the equipment that exists so you can look into lights that best suit your needs.
When talking about lighting equipment, it does in fact make sense to start with lights. For the light fixture itself, you can have open-faced lights, where the light goes directly out from the source with no interference, and a Fresnel light, which has a lens with concentric rings to direct the light and allow the user to focus the light into spot or flood. Some lights can even have diffusion or reflection built in. There are four main sources used to actually produce the light. The first is good old tungsten, which produces this nice warm light with a very high CRI. But don't plug two of them in at once or you'll destroy the outlet and burn your house down.
The second is fluorescent, which may make the gaffer in you hiss and scream. Don't worry, we don't have any here. But they do make film fluorescence with a higher CRI and therefore better color consistency.
The third is HMI, which stands for something, I'm sure. This is an uber expensive but very powerful and efficient light source for you to read about and never use.
That's because there's LEDs. This is also a very powerful and efficient light and probably won't explode when you drop it. You can change everything about an LED, from its brightness to its temperature to its tint. Heck, go RGB if you want, I don't care.
Lights can come in all shapes and sizes, from cute little box lights to big panel lights to your average circular lights. Panel lights can give a softer look, but are sometimes more difficult to modify than circular lights. Box lights are the perfect thing to give your untrained nephew to hold on to make him feel useful. Good job.
By the way, keep an eye on the wattage of your lights, like the 150C or the 300L. They're called that because of the number of watts they draw. A typical circuit, which often includes all of the outlets in a room, can handle about 1,800 watts. So if you have 4 tungsten lights drawing 500 watts each, you're going to trip a breaker. Just something to keep in mind.
In conclusion, use LEDs, unless you're a snob for tungsten or have $1 billion or something.
Okay, great. So that's the lights. But wait, what if I have an open-faced light and I want it to be soft? Or my light is good, but it's spilling into the rest of the scene and ruining the ambiance? Well, that's where attachments come in.
Most lights which are sane use a Bowens mount, which is used like this. You can use many different attachments with this mount, but we're going to show you 3.
Number 1, barn doors. These little flaps are things you can put on the lights to prevent spilling into the rest of the scene or into the camera. Lots of lights will come with these built-in or screw-onable.
Number 2, softbox. This beautiful contraption softens the light by passing it through this white sheet of diffusion held a certain distance from the light. You can also add egg crates to the softbox to get the diffused light more directional.
Number 3, paper lantern. Basically a ball of paper or other diffuser around the light which can light in all directions from the source and provide nice ambient lighting. And a bonus, my favorite, gels. You put these in front of your light to make them colorful, just like we talked about earlier. They come in many shapes and sizes, all depending on your light, and you can attach them or screw them in depending on the light you have.
So that all seems great, but sometimes it's still not enough. Sometimes in your scene there's an uncontrollable light source, or maybe you can't get your own light to behave just how you want it. The attachments that we talked about before are also known as modifiers because they modify the light. In addition to those attachments, there are also other modifiers which are used detached from the light.
If you're outside, there's usually no way to overpower the sun. This will often leave you with a very hard directional light, which will leave one side of the subject completely in shadow. For this and many other cases, you have the reflector, which does what it says. They come in silver and gold, and you'll only remember to bring it when you don't need it.
If the sun or some other light source is still too bright for your liking, you can try out a scrim, which is like a net to catch photons. Different scrims reduce brightness by different amounts, and now I'm done talking about them.
Now we get to the modifiers, which are literally just whatever you find lying around. Want to block light completely? Use a flag. It's literally just something big and black. Want to bounce your light to make it softer? Use a card, literally just a white piece of something. In other words, any piece of cardboard can be a modifier if you have enough paint.
All these modifiers might seem like a lot to make your poor nephew hold, so what to do? That's where the C-stand comes in. Is it called the C-stand because of its C shape? No! It stands for century stand, apparently. What do you know? It's a big heavy stand with these wonky feet and a grip arm to hold modifiers or even small lights wherever you like.
If you're feeling fancy, you could even put a boom arm on there and mount something more substantial.
Speaking of C-stands, let's talk about stands. And while we're talking about stands, let's talk about safety. This is a light stand, and for safety reasons, it should be weighed down with a sandbag. Like so.
If someone in your crew bumps into a light on a light stand that's not weighed down, well, if it's LED, you'll be crying. If it's tungsten, your wallet will be crying. And if it's HMI, your crew's family will be crying because they just lost another relative.
Lights which are in elevated positions should be secured with a safety cable, and power cables from lights should always be flat on the floor, or even taped down if possible. Sometimes the gaffer, the person in charge of lighting, will roll up to set with all the fancy lighting equipment, and then they'll turn on a lamp, and the director will love it. Don't ignore the effectiveness of practical lighting. It exists on set, making it motivated for free, and you don't have to hide it. And it'll probably never explode. Most likely.
Also, if you bring Christmas lights around with you wherever you go, sooner or later you can hang them up in the background of a scene and finally get those bokeh balls you always dreamed of.
Okay, that's all for lighting. I officially pronounce you gaffing expert.
Here's your gaff tape.
And your budget.
Now have fun. Bye-bye.